Thank you, Mr. Gillis. Now, to try to set an example, I'm going to attempt to have a question for each one of you that I think is probably the most significant area of your potential service here, and try to do that within our time frame. And you don't need to start so early. There it is. Starting with Mr. Donovan, you're right. In your statement, you said we must recruit and retain. That's the biggest issue out there. I mean, right now it's complicated by the fact that we have a great economy, and so we're competing with an economy at the same time. So I see two problems out there. First of all, the studies indicate that only about 29% of today's youth and the population are eligible for military service. Now, that's a huge problem. That's not a problem we've had before. And in addition to that, you have the problems then of the competition out there in the market. So how are you going to address that problem, Mr. Donovan?
Well, yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, and I have seen those same studies as well. I think it's a problem that extends beyond the Department of Defense, and it is a national issue. I recall when I was a kid in elementary school, and we had the presidential fitness program, and there was a lot of funding for sports activities and that sort of thing. So I think that all feeds in, and then when you combine that with the increased use of smartphones and video games and that sort of things, I think kids are not getting the physical activity that they need to help prepare them for the rigors of military duty. That said, I don't think that we're really having that much problem yet recruiting the kind of people that we need. We're generally filling the recruiting roles, but as we look towards the future, as we look towards the imperatives of the National Defense Strategy, then we're seeing that we're going to need to attract those skills that are in so much demand on the outside as well. A good example is cyber. That I spoke with Senator Rounds. So we're trying to partner with universities, we're trying to partner with industries even to see if there's some way that we can share the load on this, but it's an excellent question.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Gillis, we have another problem there on the Tenant Bill of Rights. When it came out, it left out two things, the dispute resolution and the ability to withhold rent. Now, when that was initially sent out to the tenants around, those are the two things that were very significant to them. So my question would be, number one, why are they left out? And number two, what's the best way to communicate that?
Yes, sir. So, I take that whole issue very seriously. I was principal deputy at the Army when we became aware of what was happening with privatized housing, so I'm personally aware that those are very important to tenants. I think we left those out because we got hung up on details, but I assure you that even from my position now in the Army that we are going to work through those. The acting assistant secretary in this role now committed to trying to do that by May 1st. If confirmed, I will carry that on. If not confirmed, I will continue to work on it from the Army perspective, because that's
great.
important.
Appreciate that. Mr. Mercado, we know that the NDS, this document here, is about more than just how many planes, ships, and tanks, but also that we buy, but also about making sure our forces can be in the right place at the right time, and that's what this, our Secretary Esper is trying to do right now. Now, in doing this, I want to single out AFRICOM and the fact that if you take all of our comms, PACOM and CENTCOM and EUCOM, that adds up to about 250,000 troops. 250,000 troops. All of AFRICOM is only 6,000 troops, and of that, 4,000 of those are in Djibouti. So that services other areas too. So I would say that that has to be the most understaffed command that we have. And so, and asking the question would be, if I would want to ensure, as you look at what is happening in that part of the world, that we are aware of the fact that we have problems in West Africa with only about 1,000 troops there in total in West Africa, and that I don't think it would be a good move to actually, during that effort by the Secretary of Defense, to actually even consider reducing that small number in West Africa. Any thoughts on that?
Yes, sir. For understand, and Africa is a challenge. We know China is very interested in Africa, not only the base they established in Djibouti, but we know they're interested in the west side like Cape Verde, Equatorial New Guinea, to kind of bridge and get both sides access to each side of Africa. People equate the reviews that we're doing too much to downsizing when it's more about right-sizing. When we reviewed the tasks that AFRICOM has been asked to do over 10 years, we find out that they are a number of 1,700 tasks. So over the years, they have been unburdened. So we need to go back and look at the critical missions they do, from train, advise, and equip, great power competition, and dealing with those violent extremist organizations that are intent to harm U.S. and the homeland, and make sure we get their presence right.
Excellent response. Senator Reed.